All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Agile Leaders, the skill mastery podcast, where we help you develop and advance as a leader through actionable insights from accomplished founders and operators. I'm your host, Evan Shai. Today, we're joined by Ryan Butz, the co-founder and COO of Temple. I am so excited to have Ryan join us because he has bootstrapped multiple companies, generating between $5 and $11 million in sales, and yet still continues to prioritize and develop as a leader. Thank you so much for being with us, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk for another hour.
All right. So I want to dive right in and start by asking, considering the demands of your current day-to-day, how exactly are you prioritizing and making time for your own growth and development as a leader?
Sure. I think it's really critical as an operator that you give yourself some strict time boxing. This sounds like super easy to do in theory, but in today's like on-demand world with Slack being on the ready, cell phones, anyone can get a hold of you. Your manager calls you, even when you're on PTO. Really having that sort of like, just you're fighting every instinct of yourself to go and read a message, read a text message, pick up that phone call while you're diving deep into something, and you're really taking yourself away from something that's super priority to you. Being a bootstrapped operator for myself, for me, I've always done everything. I've seen every facet of the business, whether it was my product company, I was actually packaging stuff in the warehouse, or currently at Temple, doing admissions calls. Like seeing that process through, there's no better way to actually understand when you're letting know that your people are able to do it yourself. So knowing you have the right people in place, that helps you when you're time boxing. Just say, you know what, they can handle it. I can keep focusing on what I need to focus on, really thinking about bigger picture things and just getting able to achieve the results you want to do. If you start getting loose with your time boxing and you don't really have a schedule, what happens is people start encroaching on that. You start setting up this sort of like, okay, Ryan's in his head down space right now, but it's okay to message him. He'll get back to me. Where if you just kind of let it go, you wait until your time boxing is over, you finish the task at hand, you see what, you missed while you were away. People start being receptive to that. And you can actually get more accomplished and be a lot more, sensitive of your time and making sure that you aren't always, at the beck and call of others.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, you end up giving people permission by setting an example of prioritizing your own development and your own learning and growth. I guess specifically, is there, if you're doing like a structured course or, I guess let's actually start there. Do you prefer kind of structured ways of learning new skills and focusing on different leadership development, be it courses, books, things like that? Or is there other methods or modalities that you try to prioritize?
I would say for me, I'm not more of the structured learning type. As it comes, you have books and there's other people that have been there and done that before. It's definitely great to look into books and see what other leaders have done. Attending podcasts, listening to podcasts and whatnot, those kind of things. Those are all great tools. But for me, again, being an entrepreneur for 10, 15 years now, so my career in entrepreneurship, I find that when you're in it, as things are happening, you're going to be, forced in a sense to take on decisions, adapt and learn from situations that come up that you weren't actively seeking out to go and actually learn. Things just kind of come at you, and you're going to have to prioritize that as it comes at you. So you can set out 1 week, to time box something that you feel is very important, or even not. You're going to have something like a fire come up, and you're like, you know what, this is actually super mission critical. What I thought was important for this week needs to, take a step back. So being able to really adapt is going to be key. So that's why I kind of structured learning. I wouldn't say I put on the back burner, but it's not my favorite because it requires not a real world scenario, like you sit down and read a book for a few hours. Like when do we have any time, like uninterrupted time like that? Right. So I definitely prefer just getting my hands dirty, breaking things and going that route.
Learn by doing, a true operator. I guess as you think about that and kind of balancing the need between specializing in certain skills with the need of maintaining a broader skill set, how have you thought about that as a leader and being, really a founder operator your entire career?
Sure. So it sounds trickier than it is, but in my mind, it's really the simplest thing. But you have to be true to yourself and understand your weaknesses and strengths. I wouldn't be here today if I wasn't true to myself. I went to school to become a graphic designer. It's really quick to find out you're not a good graphic designer when you're up against really talented people, right? So I knew pretty quickly in my career that I wasn't going to go far there. I figured out where my strengths were. I saw that I was leaning into more like higher picture things. I could manage graphic designers a lot better than I could manage my own talents or actually skill myself up. It just wasn't something, I was born with. I wasn't an artist. I wasn't anything like that. It was truly more like a passion project, right? Once I really started getting out there in the real world. When you recognize that and when you can understand that, you can find out where you need to specialize and where you don't need to specialize. You're going to find out where you're going to actually want to lean into more. So mine obviously goes on the creative side of things. So I find myself really wanting to push on the creative marketing, pseudo marketing kind of level, sales, those kind of things. But when you start understanding that those, what you believe are your strengths are actually part of your weaknesses, you start knowing where you need to move and where you need to develop your skills. So, kind of figuring that out is step one. And again, I can only speak as an operator, but the saying "jack of all trades, master of none," like you actually have to be that person. Although in most specializations, that's like you don't want to be that. You want to be a master at your craft, right? As an operator, you need to say, you know what, I'm not a master at one specific thing. That this isn't something I was inherently better at than anybody else. You need to master your skills of actually operations, and operations is, there's so many different complexities with it, and just prioritizing one versus another. At least in my world, you have to give equal attention to everything. So, if you're not an operator like me, you are a specialist. You are specifically like a product designer focusing on something along those lines. You really have to decide, where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses, find that out for yourself first, and then you can go from there.
I appreciate that. I want us to drill in a little bit more. I mean, look, the reality is you've been extremely successful, more so than a lot of entrepreneurs out there. And you've been able to do it bootstrapping, both of these companies. So I think that comes with a certain amount of pragmatism and skills, whether or not those were learned and polished over the years or learned in kind of more traditional settings. If I kind of backed you into a corner and you had to identify a couple skills that were the most critical, to your success, can you share a few of those with us? Like just, between us ultimately and all of the viewers. What has been the most impactful and meaningful for your success?
Yep. So this one I really wish I had the answer to 15 years ago, because I would have paid attention a little bit more in those computer literacy classes. But in my day-to-day, I have found myself in spreadsheets more than I ever could have imagined, right? So what is that really saying is I'm analyzing and poring over fanatically about data. Data just drives all of my decisions, and it doesn't necessarily need to be in sales. It doesn't necessarily be in marketing. Data drives all decisions. So I think universally, I can say that has to be a critical asset and component that you have in your day-to-day is understanding basic concepts and mathematical equations that get you to the, your true north, I guess, is the data. It's really easy to be inundated in something all day long and have like a get like some sort of emotional response to something you're working on. But data, numbers, Excel, it's agnostic. It does not lie. It can tell you a lot of things that will be missed when you're just doing like a human audit, where someone that's in a day-to-day, they might develop weaknesses that you don't recognize, and the data can actually exploit those weaknesses. So I wish it's funny. Like I have some really close friends that are CPAs, and what I would consider to be my strengths in Excel, they make look like I'm like still in eighth grade, still learning, right? So even still to this day, like if you're benchmarking against other people, that's not necessarily critical to your success. So I'm still constantly trying to analyze how I can be better managing data, understanding data, and just really developing my data analysis skills.
Well, I've certainly seen that firsthand, man. And independent of, a CPA's ability or proficiency in using Excel specifically, I think what you're drilling into is data-driven decision making, a certain acumen for financial and key performance indicators, and how to use those things to help you make more objective and informed decisions. I think you've done that. It seems intuitive to you. Again, maybe that was easier now in your career than it was in the beginning of your career, but it's been impressive to see, working with you every day, man. On that note, actually, has mentors, so maybe these CPAs or others, has mentorship played a role in your own skill development process?
Oh, absolutely. Hasn't played a role. It is critical, it's necessary. It's required, right? Especially in entrepreneurship, and I don't want to say it just as entrepreneurs because I feel like mentorship is critical in every role, and I'll try to get there. But we don't have a playbook, right? There's books on business and all sorts of things. All businesses aren't treated equally. Every decision isn't treated equally. They're all not the same. But people that have been there and done that and been successful, they have a secret sauce, and success doesn't happen by chance. It's a series of mistakes, learning from mistakes, making good decisions, and growing from those decisions. Nobody's built multi-million-dollar businesses without failing and failing multiple times. And there's truly is one thing that we have that we can't get back on this earth, and that's time, right? So what better way than to gain time by having mentors that have been there? They can help you with these critical decisions. They can help you, guide you. You can learn from them. You can shadow them. You can, even a mentor you don't have direct access to, whether that's somebody you look up to and they have books or they have podcasts, those kind of things. They can be a mentor too, and you can kind of look at their playbooks and see what they did. What would they have done in your shoes here? Those are the kind of mentors you may not have direct access to, but the kind of mentors that you do have direct access to, you just got to go on a limb and say, you know what, I'm going to reach out to this person, see what they say, see if they'll take me under their wing, and just start asking questions. More often than not, you'll find that people want to share their knowledge. They're not like, no, I'm going to hoard this. And that's not just in entrepreneurship. That's not just in business. That goes for software engineers, teachers, everything. People want to give back. They not to be boastful, but they want to talk about their experience. That's what people like to talk about all day, right? At the end of the day, it's like you get done with work, you talk about work. It's like, well, it's crazy, but people, obsess over it. We find commonalities in it. We like learning from each other. I found that there's like an insatiable, thirst for knowledge within people. And I think anyone that's ever been a mentor or mentee can kind of attest to that. There's no shortage of mentors out there. There's shortage of people asking for mentorship. So definitely go out there and start looking for people, because that's tremendously helped me in my career. It continues to help me in my career, and I don't see that ever stopping. I can even say that the most successful people in the world that you can think of, your Bezoses, your Musks, those kind of guys, whether it's not professional, they have to have mentors too, whether it's in their personal development or what have you. Mentorship doesn't go away even at the top tier levels of success.
That is a nugget I am going to save. There's no shortage of mentors out there. There's a shortage of people asking for mentorship. I like that a lot. They say the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. I think oftentimes people can hear that, they get it intuitively, but then they struggle to, what can I actually do about that? I maybe don't have access to these successful people, or I'm in a small community who doesn't, again, provide the kind of entrepreneurial community that maybe we have access to in larger cities or kind of more dense networks. But there are all these sources of inspiration and reading and podcasts and that you can gain inspiration from, and in a lot of ways interact with and be surrounded by, that I think can augment that that experience a bit. I think that's super important as well. Um, is there a specific routine or practice that you utilize? You had mentioned time boxing as kind of one of those strategies or frameworks to prioritize your personal development. But is there anything else that you do on a regular weekly or daily basis to ensure that you're making progress in your own development?
You know what? So like by like nature, I'm just routine. I'm just routine. Yeah, like I get up at the same time every day. I eat the same thing for breakfast. Like I said, time boxing. My boxes of time and windows of heads down time are the same every day. I relatively eat the same every day. Work out the same time every day. So like I understand that most people don't follow the same types of routines as me, but that's what works for me. Um, Understandably, with that, routine can also be something that can hold you back in a sense. Whereas if you aren't able to rebound or see what's going on or move with the wind and see what's going on, you could be stuck in a routine that's actually hindering you from your personal or professional development. Being too strict on your routine can help you not have blinders on as well. If you're just two heads down and you're not seeing what's actually going on outside, that's something that it's a balancing act, right? And there's people out there that hate routine, right? They're always late to dinners. They travel all over, and I have so much respect, right? I would love it. I didn't have that bone in my body where I could actually that wouldn't stress me out for days or weeks. But there is a good balance between having a good relationship with routine, time boxing, to help you in your personal and professional goals, but also recognizing, what routines are meant to be broken. They're meant to be shaken up, and doing the same thing over and over again. That's the definition of insanity, right? So like being too routine can cause you issues in your life. So making sure you're sticking to a routine that's also like moving the bar is definitely critical. So for routine, for the sake of having the same things happening every day is not good. But for me, just making sure when I have that kind of routine in place, it gives me a sense of balance. It gives me a sense of accomplishment, knowing that I was able to get through the things I set out to get through, and setting goals within those routines. I think routines without goals is another killer, right? It's just like if you're not actually actively looking for the next best thing and you're just kind of doing the same thing day in and day out, you're not going to make any progress. You're not going to be happy. And I think that is a big part of balancing that personal routine and professional routine as well, and just making sure that you're actually making progress.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I mean, if you don't ultimately have a true north that is the objective or the purpose with which defines or gives meaning to that routine, it's kind of hard to be able to gauge if you're making progress towards that thing ultimately. Otherwise, it's probably the difference between habits and a routine, if you will, right? Routine probably implies a certain amount of intentionality and objective implied or underlying that routine ultimately. So that makes complete sense. Any advice that you would give, someone else who maybe feels overwhelmed by the prospect of trying to learn new skills while managing their current responsibilities in a leadership role?
No, what I would say is that, being even able to have the luxury of time to gather new skills should be something that you cherish and have gratitude for. Gratitude for being able to achieve and actually be in a position you're in to gain new skills is something that's very, we take it for granted, right? I think when you have the flexibility to actually work on your personal and professional development, you should take it very seriously. When you have a deadline that you need to hit, or you have something in the way that you're really stressed out about, I think you always come out at the end of that situation surprised at actually what you're you're able to do, whether it's your mind, whether it's your skill set, whether it's your, something else. When we're pushed to our limits, it just, what all that's doing is creating a new baseline for what our new norm is, right? So you think only working 6 hours a day is something that you're capable of doing, or sleeping 8 hours a day is something you need. And all of a sudden you're pushing it 5 to 10 more minutes, working just a little bit smarter, or getting backed into a corner on a project with a deadline that you don't think is actually possible. It's like, well, work backwards and figure out what is actually possible. How are we going to achieve it before totally shutting down and saying, this is too hard. This is unachievable. I think when you start getting yourself used to discomfort and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, that's when what overwhelming feels like changes for you. What you start becoming overwhelmed less, you start managing your stress levels better. Stress that doesn't even come to you anymore because you aren't blindsided by something that used to cause you anxiety. I think tackling that with such a positive attitude, just a positive attitude towards life, in what your days, what happens in your day, generally will help with your overall level of discomfort, I think. So anyone that's feeling like nervous or scared about whether it's a promotion they don't feel like they're equipped for, a skill that it's too hard for them to learn, or an exam they don't think they could pass, or a deadline they have to hit. Really sitting down and just figuring out, like, what is it going to take to achieve that goal, and how important is that goal for you? I think once you reach your limit, you get that said goal done. All of a sudden you're going to look back and say, well, that was so much easier than I made it out to be in my head. And, as you keep pushing through these things, you just become a stronger individual, and just, you go from there.
Yeah, things always look more daunting as we think about them in the future, right? They're grandiose, they're huge, they're complex, and I found that, like, distilling it into its small enough constituent pieces makes any large, ambitious goal achievable and quite practical even. And to the extent that you aren't there yet, you haven't broke it down into enough individual pieces, because it really just is a series of steps ultimately that you need to take in order to achieve whatever it is that we're talking about achieving. And I've always said, when you look at someone, whether it's a mentor or a colleague who has a particularly impressive set of skills, the distance and the difference between you and that person is really just a series of experiences that they have had that you have not yet. And it's just like, how ultimately can we start creating and earning those experiences, one little experience at a time, to ultimately, realize those skills for yourself. So,
No, yeah. Yeah, I love that. I'm going to steal your little nugget there. It's just the little experiences that others have had that we haven't had. That's a huge separation for some people to understand. But really, it's just that going back to how much time we have, and what we time being something that we can't really make up. Whether we can actually go get somebody else to replicate some of the work we're doing, which essentially is we're duplicating time, right? Learning from experiences, going back to that mentorship, that is one of the most key components to growth as you can have. And that's why I always circle back to books are great. I love structured learning and those kind of things, but nothing beats experiences.
Let's lean into that real quick. So, in terms of the mentorships, like, is there any things we kind of both touch on, a couple specific things? I'll even lead us in here. I always kind of generally heard or understood the importance of mentors, and people smarter than me would always communicate, how important or influential it was in their life. But it just never seemed that accessible to actually do in any type of consistent or meaningful way to where it had an impact on me earlier on in my career. It wasn't until I did things like I did a PhD program at U of I, or I did Techstars NYC, where it really hypercharged this. I threw myself into this really dense experience with a lot of really smart people who were really passionate about similar things. And it really unlocked what the power of like mentorship, could ultimately be, and have ever since been a lot better and more intentional with how I create those relationships and continue to manage those relationships. Is there anything that you've done? I know you haven't done like a Techstars NYC or things like that, and you've been an entrepreneur, a solo operator in some cases. Like, what have you done? Like, any specific tactics that you could share with the audience that might help them find people and build those relationships?
Sure. And this is gonna go back to that last question about getting overwhelmed and getting uncomfortable. I feel like I'm a very outgoing type of individual when I'm inside of my comfort zone. I definitely would be considered like the life of the party in a way, in a group setting with 5 or 6 of my closest friends. But get me outside of that, I'm definitely as introverted as they come, right? So when it comes to meeting new people, asking for mentorship, those kind of things, you really got to push yourself out of your comfort zone. You got it. One of my closest mentors, my father-in-law, we call him a bird dogger. He's an old school salesman. I've traveled the world with him. We've gone to in-state, out of country type of places. And I don't think I've ever been anywhere with him where he doesn't know somebody and or by the end of the night know a few people. And that's just networking 101, sales 101. It's just going out there talking. You have no idea who the person you're talking to, who they know, what kind of synergies there will be, where your paths will lead 3 to 5 years down the road. So I think when it comes to mentorship and just general relationship building, it's all about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, asking for help when you feel like you need help, and understanding where and when you need help, and just making yourself available. Because nobody's going to come to you and be like, hey, I'm going to take you under your wing. I'm going to bring you here. That just doesn't happen, right? People need to get pushed, and you need to push yourself as well. So really just making yourself vulnerable, that's going to be step one, and ultimately get you to where you need to go.
I love that. With your father-in-law, do you think that's a skill that he always had, or that's one that he developed over the course of his career?
It developed over the course of his career as an entrepreneur himself, starting around 16 years old, starting as a siding company. It becomes necessity that you go and get yourself out there, right? So he found that the best way to get new clients was just talking to people, meeting people, building that kind of trust, building that rapport. And I still am a firm believer that trust is built in person. And although we live in this amazing new Zoom type of world, nothing beats the human interaction, the human element. And we're finding more and more that people are wanting to go back into the office space to be around people. They're wanting to attend in-person events. They're wanting to attend, networking events. And for me, when I first started, that was one of the biggest things. Super easy. You just go join your local business association. All of a sudden, you're connected with 500 to 1,000 different businesses in your surrounding area. And you'll never find a better place that wants to help out than someone that's local to your community. Like, why would you want to give to like a national chain when you can shop local, and you have young contractors or professionals, and they want to give their business and work together? All goes back to out of necessity. Like, how are you going to survive? And it's just, you have to meet people, you have to meet customers, you have to build relationships. So I think his came out of necessity. I think I've gotten to a place where I am out of necessity and getting yourself uncomfortable.
I love it, man. I love it. Is there any particular resources or tools that you use or you find helpful in your skill development?
Skills or resources or tools or resources I use for my personal to professional development. None of that I can say like strikes me as like, this is my go-to resources. So this is going to be something that puts you over the edge, gives you a sort of competitive advantage. I would say just a constant state of wanting growth and finding what those tools are going to be for you to give you a competitive advantage or give you some sort of advantage to continue on with your knowledge gain. That's where it's going to be. So I don't think that answers, Because if any one person had that, everyone would have that one skill or that one tool or resource. I think that would be able to push them over to get a one up on everybody else. But just using all the tools that are available and not turning a blind eye to staying stuck in, systems or processes that you had in place, and just being able to evolve and adapt. Everything moves really quickly now, so you have to be agile.
I mean, but I do know that you use Udemy, books, podcasts, newsletters. I mean, you do, consume content and get various learning material from those sources, right?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, between anything that's out there, just being able to, give yourself time to skill up yourself. You can't just stay stagnant. And if something new comes out, I even had a post on LinkedIn recently about some of my 10 most used tools in my arsenal today. The funniest or coolest thing about it at the time, and this was a month ago, I probably should rewrite it. I believe 8 of the 10 tools I didn't use 6 months ago. So that's how fast the things are moving. A lot of these tools are AI-based tools, and just the way we all consume content is changing and evolving so fast. And how quickly can we get brought up to speed with things? I've always said that I'm kind of like the black sheep of the family. I come from a long line of iron workers and tradesmen, and just hanging up a picture frame in my house is difficult for me to do. So what do? I learn how to do it on YouTube. Like, we're in an information age that just wasn't accessible to us 10 to 15 years ago. So if you're actively, consuming information from, every angle, you're going to be giving yourself a competitive advantage for people that, are scrolling on social media all day, let's say.
Really appreciate it, Ryan. This was as informative and insightful as I had hoped it would be. I'm looking forward to everyone being able to take a peek inside your brain and your routines and see at least some of what has made you so successful throughout your career. Thank you so much for making the time for us today. I know how busy you are, so I appreciate it, Ryan.
I appreciate it. I had a great time. Thanks for chatting.
Awesome.